This meeting is now being recorded. So thank you all for coming. Welcome to Progressive Montco's bi-weekly racial justice working group meeting. As those that have been part of the meetings know, just a quick follow-up, some of our work has been in addressing pretrial detention, the systemic issues in pretrial detention, systemic, our injustices within our criminal justice system, right? Overarching, coming from a racial justice thing. So in that work, we, instead of always standing out on street corners and screaming and hollering that we want to see changes, part of this has to be to educate people so that we could all make informed action steps towards a better tomorrow. In that work, we realize we want Montgomery County is a great place to start. Again, I'm an abolitionist. I would like to abolish pretrial detention, but I know that there's steps to that, right? I can't just close Montgomery County jail tomorrow and do whatever. We could, but people wouldn't be okay with that. So in doing that, we've been meeting with folks, trying to get more information so we can better understand where Montgomery County is currently in our criminal justice system, where we're going, and then also for the folks in the group that aren't currently involved in the criminal justice system, where we would like to go, right? So leading up to today, we've met with Dean Beer, who's the former chief public defender in Montgomery County, along with a public defender, Joellen Jones from New Jersey, where New Jersey has already ended cash bail and operates under different, they haven't completely ended cash bail, but they operate under a system that is kind of one that you would look at and say, okay, well, maybe working, still flaws, but something we could work with. We also then met with our commissioners, Ken Lawrence and Valar Kush, to discuss our Pretrial Services Unit in Montgomery County. We met with them under the belief that they're paying for it. They should kind of know what they're getting, what they're getting out of their money. In the course of doing that, I had asked, and I'm going to get the introduction, so I'm sorry for the long-winded opening, right? In the course of doing this, before we would have asked to meet with the public defender's office, we actually asked to meet with Judge Del Ricci, who's the president judge who's overseeing the development of this pretrial services unit. Judge Del Ricci's response was that he would meet with me and 2 to 3 other people, and then we could then take that information we got from that meeting and bring it to the bigger group. Gratefully for this meeting today, that meeting happened at 2:00 this afternoon. So the information is fresh in my head, and our PDs that are representing the PD's office that are on the call, right, would either be able to confirm or deny that this is what criminal justice is going to look like in Montgomery County moving forward. I'm so ecstatic that, as tired as I am, that all of these things happen today. So with that said, on the call with us today, we have Greg Nestor, who is co-chief public defender currently in Montco. He is co-chief with Carol Sweeney, who is also on the call with us today. And then Elena Hook, who is superstar policy, social service chief for our public defender's office. So since you guys are new to this, I'm going to change a little bit how we started because, to my daughter who teaches me everything that I know about social justice, I have a question for you before we get started today. What made you smile today? Or around the room, however you want it. Allie, you first.
I think our conversation right before this that Mark and I had about the meeting with Del Ricci, because I was, working to prepare for the meeting and putting together questions and doing all of this that we'd all been doing, but then I wasn't able to be there in person, and I was hoping to be able to call in, and I wasn't able to, so I was very upset that I couldn't be there in the room. But then when I heard all of the great things that came out of it, that made me smile and like want to jump up and down that we were able to have that meeting and that we're able to be joined by the three of you this evening. So all of that is a long way of saying that all of this, everything today made me smile.
Can I just leave now on that high note? Can I just, no, it doesn't get better for me today than that. That makes me smile to hear that. So.
Dean.
You're muted.
You're still muted, Dean.
Try to pull my screen up. So my name's Dean Beer. You know, I was there's a conflicting meeting tonight, as Mark knows, with the Cheltenham branch of the NAACP youth group, and I got on that for the first hour, and while it was very troubling what these young people said, it was very, very powerful, but it did make me. Parts made me smile just in the power of these young kids to what they've done, from where they started way back to what they've accomplished. I mean, there's 80 people on that call listening to them run that thing. And that's pretty amazing. I'm stopping myself from cursing because usually I'd say it's pretty blank and amazing, but it really was just humbling that the work that they've done. And so, that made me kind of smile about the future of you hear all these things about kids, whatever, but it was pretty impressive. It was very impressive. So that made me smile, though the stories were heartbreaking that some of these kids talked about.
That's definitely a good reason to smile, Dean. Makes me smile too. Sue Hoffman.
I live in Windmore, and I woke up this morning early and said, I've got to get out and walk before it gets too hot. And just listening to the birds made me smile. I live in, someplace where I hear a lot of birds, and walking around the neighborhood, and then later on, we got the news that you can stop wearing masks in Philadelphia. So living right next to Philadelphia, when you're outside in Philadelphia, no masks. So if you're vaccinated, which I am, so that was another reason to smile.
I'm glad. Thanks. Nicole Zapata.
Hi. I blew up an inflatable pool for my kids today. That marks summer, I guess, which makes me smile. And made some plans with a larger group than we've been with in a long time for Friday night. So that was pretty awesome. I mean, it's still outside, but that's just because it can be because it's nice out. My daughter's saying hello. Yeah, and I don't live in the city. Good night, honey. I can hear you. Good night. But I was happy that Krasner won the vote and someone local here won for us, which was a good day. And I watered all my plants.
Thanks. Pam Albright.
Hi, everybody. Actually, I was going to say the same. I smiled when I learned that Larry Krasner had won. It was a big relief. And I also just enjoyed the summer-like weather. I'd much rather have this than 20 degrees below. So, and I'm walking my dogs too. I just enjoyed nature.
Thank you.
I live in Cheltenham, by the way. Cheltenham, and I'd be curious to hear more about the NAACP in Cheltenham, because I really am not familiar with what they're doing, but I do live in Cheltenham.
Well, I'll share the link, the recording, because I'm sure they have a recording of the video. I'll share it back with our group also, so that you guys can see that.
Yeah, great,
Also.
thanks.
For those that are just getting on the call that didn't hear, we're going around and everybody's just saying, what made you smile today? So I'm gonna go with Miss, is it Alana or Elena Hook?
answer to both because no one can say it right. So it's Alana, but when you call me Elena, I'll still respond. The elections made me happy. I saw a lot of good showing, and that was a concern. So I'm glad that the people understood that it's still just as important to come out on an off year and to make sure that we get the people who we need to see on the ballot. And so I'm just smiling because I have a little bit more hope today than I did the other days, seeing that people still are engaged.
Thank you. Mr. Greg Nestor.
I'm going to cheat and give you two things. Number one, my son lives in Alabama and I see him far too infrequently. So every day I get to talk to him or video call with him makes me smile. So I got to have a nice conversation with him today. And the other thing that made me smile, as I mentioned, I'm sure this made Carol smile as well, was getting confirmation that the resources we're going to need as an office to staff the pretrial services program will be available for us. And that is a great load off of my mind. So I'm relieved, I'm smiling, I'm beaming. That's a big thing.
Ms. Carol Sweeney.
Well, Greg stole my thunder on that one, but it's all good. Really what made me smile today was I had a number of preliminary hearings and I won a few of them, and that made me smile. That made me smile. So it's nice because processing legal work is not, I don't do that as much as I like. So I have held on to my preliminary hearings and I do them on Wednesdays, and everybody likes to win and my clients like their charges to be dismissed. So that made me smile.
Right. Thank you. Miss Anania Jones.
It made me smile when I got on this meeting and I heard that my dad was stealing my lines and stuff. That made me smile.
Mr. Nazir.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. Oh. Hold on. Well, my fault. I wasn't near my phone. I'm joining late, so I kind of don't know what's going on.
What made you smile today?
Does it have to be like personal, something that just affects me or affect my community?
You could have farted it to make you smile. I don't know. Whatever it is. Whatever made you smile today, brother.
My cat is pregnant.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. See, we're off to a good note here. Thank you. Did I miss anybody? No, right? Everybody? Allie. No, Allie went first. All right, I did get everybody. Okay. And Kelly dropped off, so I'll wait for her to come back on. All right, so let's get started. Shouldn't be hard, right? So, as I was saying earlier, part of what we are trying to do is really, in my home, we want to see abolition, right? But I am aware that you have to take steps to get to abolition. Like there's people have to understand why this is the right thing to do. The only way for them to understand why this is the right thing to do is to show them the system that gets us to that place, right? So to create a system where we aren't just incarcerating people for victimless crimes, where we don't have people who are sitting in prison because they couldn't feed their family and they had to find a way to feed their family, right? Like, how do we get, that's what we want to see. I think one of the biggest things out of the call that we had with Jersey was the fact that they literally had to now look at closing their county prisons because how far the population has dropped, right? Like, imagine how crazy that is. So we have to be close to there now in Montco because in my conversation with Doug Ritchie today, he definitely drove home, and Val drove that home in our last call, that our current population is only 800, which is a substantial decrease, right? But if out of those 800, we're still holding 500 pre-trial, right? Then that's still where our problem lies. Imagine a system where the 400 people that are actually incarcerated should be incarcerated, and only those people, and the amount of money that we're saving. So we asked Greg and Carol to come on because, you know, we wanted to know, how do you guys envision pretrial services? How could that work for you as public defenders, for us as civilians that could potentially need a public defender to keep us out of jail? Whichever one of you want to go first, that's my first question.
I will jump in and tell you, I view it as two things, and those numbers are right. The prison population is down 44%, but you know, it's our goal to get it to 50%. When we hit 50, it'll be our goal to get it to 60%. And then when we get to 60, it'll be our goal to get it to 70%. You know, we want to keep that number coming down. And I'm so grateful and a fan of how you said that we have to take the steps to get to the goal. You can't get from today to your ultimate goal without walking down the path, right? And that's what we're doing. And you walk down the path one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And that's what we're doing. I see, and this is very, very broad stroke here, the ultimate goal to me of pretrial services is, number one, to decrease pretrial detention, obviously. But number two, it is for early identification of folks who get caught up in the criminal justice system of their needs, addiction treatment, mental health treatment, homelessness, whatever that is. You know, I mean, folks commit crime or are accused of committing crime for a reason. Okay, it's not, hey, this sounds fun, let's go do this, right? It stems from mental illness. It stems from drug addiction. It stems from homelessness. It stems from a lot of the issues that we need to work on. Okay, because number one, it's just the right thing to do. Okay, and secondarily, it's going to be the cause of a reduction in our prison population, and it's going to be it's going to lead to safer communities, safer for everyone. So that's what I see as pretrial services: reducing prison population so that we're not incarcerating folks who just frankly don't need to be there, and number two, identifying early people who have a need for treatment, housing, whatever it may be, so that we can all come together to provide that. Okay, it's going to take a team to do that. I'm the public defender. I can't provide people a house. Okay, I can work though with different county agencies. I can work with community agencies. I can work with a lot of people to try and find that. Okay, that to me are the two goals of pretrial services.
Appreciate that. Carol, Alana, any?
I mean, I obviously echo the sentiments that Greg said, but just for instance, today, when I said I had preliminary hearings, there was a young man that could no longer go back to live with his parents. So housing became an issue. We can't treat our prison as a hotel for people that have nowhere else to go. It's not the function that it was made for, and it's not a function that we will permit it to be used for. So Alana got involved and she talked to my client, and we came up with something a little temporary. But as of today, his bail was changed to unsecured. He's only 20 years old. In my opinion, has some mental health and some, drug issues. So, we got one of the conditions to be that he is evaluated, and, let's move forward. So that is truly what I think one of the benefits of this program will be, because he spent 12 days in jail. Never 12 long days for a 20-year-old, because he fought with his stepfather. And then there are some issues there. I mean, nobody's ever blameless in a fight. Let's put it that way. But, so it's good. 12 days is still 12 days too long, but it's better 12 days than 6 months. And the other thing that we will have to look at that pretrial will not be addressing is our clients that are incarcerated as a result of probation detainers. So after we get this situation up and running and, you know, start tweaking it as the need be, that is clearly an area that we will be taking up next. We've already had a few preliminary discussions about it, but frankly, we need to have more, because if you don't know, when you're incarcerated because you violated your supervision, there is no bail set. So you cannot get out until either your back judge permits you to be released or your case is resolved. So that's even a broader area. So I hate to say it, because we're happy we got this running, but now this other thing is blinking over here that we need to get done. So, you know, one thing at a time, but it is definitely on our radar and something that we already started to address. So.
I'm just going to echo on something, and I'll hand it over to Alana, because Carol raised two really, really great points. Number one is, over the past, I don't know how many years, but several years, you know, police officers, courts, they just use the jail as the place to put anybody who has a problem, right? Jails aren't psychiatric hospitals. Jails aren't drug treatment centers. They're not homeless shelters. Okay, but that's what they get used for. And that's the fundamental error there, right? Is because if some judge puts cash bail on somebody and the police drop them off, jail can't turn them away, right? They have to take them in. And that's just wrong. I mean, that's just wrong. Folks who have addiction issues need to be in treatment. Folks who have mental health issues need to be in treatment, outpatient basis, or in a psychiatric hospital. Every other week, I speak to a group of police officers over at Building 50, and I try and drive this point home, okay? Someone who is exhibiting mental illness in your community, you don't have to arrest them and put them in jail. You have options for mental health treatment, okay? Don't put them in jail, because trust me, I mean, I handle most of the mental health cases in the public defender's office, and once they go in jail, it's a pain to get people back out. Don't put them in to begin with, okay? So it's that misuse of the jail. And Carol really hit the point. People are detained pretrial primarily in two categories. One, there's cash bail, or number two, they're on probation supervision. And so they have a new charge, they're automatically, and it seems like in Montgomery County, detained, pending outcome of the new charges. And that's wrong too. If I'm on probation for an offense and I catch a retail theft, I'm going to try and be like Dina, watch my language, because I'm going to get a little salty if I keep going down this road and say a curse word or two. Why in that circumstance should I have to sit in jail for 6 months waiting on my stupid retail theft case to be resolved that I'm never going to get jail time on anyway? Why do I have to sit in jail for 6 months? So that's the other part that needs to be addressed. Now, pretrial services is addressing the bail part of it. And that's fine. And that's great for what they're going to do. But like Carol said, that was a great way to put it. There's this other thing blinking over here that as soon as this gets off the ground, we need to collaborate with you and others so that we can address that second thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in front of you, Alana, but go ahead.
Can I jump in for one quick sec? Because this is exactly what Mark and I were talking about. We were, excited about this, call and this meeting today. And I said, oh, the next fight is going to be making sure that people that are out on parole and probation, if they get pulled back in for technical violations, that they're not there. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that you two both just said that, because that's what we were just talking about.
And, and Carol and I have been, banging our head into that post for a long time. And finally, recently, maybe, we've caused a crack in that wall. Because, now the response we're getting is kind of like, we will talk about that. Or, yeah, I see that point. So we're getting a little bit of positive feedback on that now. That made me smile yesterday, by the way. So when we had that conversation, but we're getting a little bit of some positive feedback now on that. And I know most of you don't know Carol, Alana, or I, but one thing I can say about the three of us is we're pretty persistent people. And that's how I got my wife to marry me, was persistence. So we're going to keep that effort up. And as soon as we get, like Carol said, one thing launched, we're heading to the other.
That's good. Alana?
Sure. I think what COVID illustrated for the entire county was the need for incarceration is not always as apparent as we once thought, right? And we don't have to force anyone into recovery through incarceration, because the fact of the matter is it's not clinically sound to do that. You can't make someone want to be well in the throes of their addiction unless they feel that they have that motivation. So incarceration, it's sort of like a shock that we used to think would work, but time and time again, studies and data have shown that that's not an appropriate mechanism to force treatment, and it doesn't create trust in the system. So if someone knows that I relapse and I go to probation and I'm honest, and I go to jail because of it, I'm less likely to ever divulge that I'm struggling or relapsing or that I need help again in the future, because my fear is that it's going to be punitive instead of holistic and supportive, right? And we're not treating the root. So many of our clients are committing crimes that are needs-based, in my opinion. So when you see someone who's going to a Rite Aid and stealing formula or chips or, things that are so nominal, it's not because they're, a danger to society, a menace that, lacks insight and conscious. No, they're functioning in a way that they need to survive. And that's not a criminal element. It's a failure of the system as a whole. And so through our partnerships and through making inroads with these different programs and making sure that people fully understand who our clients are as humans, we're seeing this come back full circle, where it's being reflected in some of the outcomes of our court cases. And I'm excited because I just feel like there's so many things that are on the horizon to help with people who are housing unstable and to create more programs around housing stability, because so many folks are being jammed up for trespassing, open containers, things like that, that are just a mechanism or a byproduct of being unhoused. And here we are, the third richest county in the state, and we are failing, right? So it's not necessarily just a criminal justice problem, but a social services problem. And so, I'm hopeful that our partnerships and making sure that we have a mechanism to get these folks connected without the use of incarceration first will really change the landscape of how we seek justice and how these programs are set to run moving forward.
I was really trying to talk crazy. Somebody asked a question in the chat. Does anybody have any numbers as to the percentage of people currently in jail that are there on probation violations?
That is a great question and a very difficult one to answer, even though it doesn't seem like it would be. And I'll tell you why it's a difficult one to answer. And we're trying to get that number narrowed down, because the code on the sheet when someone gets entered to the jail doesn't necessarily reflect all that. Okay, they can be coded in as further trial or something like that, or trial. Well, that means they got new charges, but it doesn't mean that they don't have anything else. Okay, so it's a little complicated to figure that out, and we've been talking, I know, to the jail for a very long time about finding a way to be able to get that information. And we've had those conversations again pretty recently to see if we can find a different way to code that so that we can know, because most things on the prison, I'm not the most techie guy as you're going to discover tonight, the prison program, computer program, whatever it is, where I can go onto the offender management system and look people up and see what's going on. You can run reports in different ways. But what happens sometimes is when you're admitted to the jail, okay, Ms. Sweeney, we're going to interview you. You're coming in on a new charge, blah, blah, blah. And that's how you're logged in. A day after you're in, that probation detainer is going to hit. Okay. Not always does somebody go back, and it gets put in that there's a probation detainer. But when you run those stats, or when you see that, they call it the night board or other things where you can run why they're admitted, it looks like they're admitted just on new charges, when that detainer may hit a day or two later. And sometimes the opposite is true too. Sometimes probation will detain somebody, and then a couple of days later they get arraigned from the jail on a new charge. So it's a bit in the coding system hard to figure it out, but that's something we're really trying to do as we try to, like I said, when pretrial services gets launched, to focus more on that other issue.
So there's a question in the chat now. Wouldn't probation have that information already?
Probation should have that information. So yeah.
They wouldn't give that stuff to you guys going in because
Probation would have the information on how many people they have detainers for, and that they've detained, you know, so they would have some of that as well. Most of that.
But they wouldn't know, so they wouldn't be able to pull out to say how many, in comparison to how many people probation has detainers on, we have this amount of people currently incarcerated due to, you know, these violations, regardless of their other charges, right? Like, so somebody got a charge for theft, retail theft, but now they're being held because that's a violation of their probation.
Right.
Probation should be able to have that, right?
And one thing we're hoping for, you know, the pretrial services program is going to be very data heavy. And so one thing we're hoping for is some of that information will be discernible through the information that pretrial services obtains. So yeah, so I'm just going to be, the candid answers. I think that's still somewhat of a fluid situation, but we understand it's a necessary statistic we need to get.
I think it's a big number, and I think, you know, I think it's bigger than what we think that it is. And yeah, we're going to get the number one way or the other. I mean, it would be a little bit difficult for us, time consuming really is what it would be to go through and do it. But I think it's a big number. I think it's bigger than what we think that it is. And that's a situation that, you know, we're going to address it. And we're obviously going to need our community partners when we start addressing this and start, you know, if we get pushback, then we're going to need our community partners to weigh in as well, because, you know, as a group, we're much more effective than we are as the one. But yeah, I think it's a big number, and I, you know, it's inappropriate to me. So
Okay.
we'll get one thing on the road and work on the other. But I think it's big.
And I'll just to throw some out there, you know, at least probation was always willing to give you the number if you asked them for it. Just they will tell you how many detainers they lodge or people in the jail. I don't know if it's always correct, but at least they will give you a number, and they'll break it out for
Right. So
technicals and directs.
I think that the information that we're really wanting, the data we're really wanting to get our hands on is the number, especially those who are in on nothing else, right? Those who are just in on that detainer. Those are the ones we really want to separate out from those who have the dual issue of the new charge and the VOP, because I can't tell you how many times, you know, we've been about a year ago, Carol and I, well, maybe not quite a full year ago, but pretty darn close, started working with a bunch of MDJs and police departments, and we've been sitting in on preliminary arraignments. And in doing that, I can't tell you how many times, you know, you see, you know, whenever you look at the bails of folks at prison, when you see bail of $100, 10%, okay, all the time these judges will say, well, there's a probation violation detainer on you, so I'm going to set your bail to $100 so you get time credit. Okay, so when you see those low bails, you kind of figure there's probably a probation detainer. But I'm not saying that's the right, I mean, it's a crazy way of doing business, right? That's just crazy. But that's too often what happens. Now you're held on this little bit of bail, but for some folks, $100 might as well be $1 million, right? And you're also held on that probation violation because they tend to go hand in hand as far as the MDJ courts are concerned. So, you know, and that's something that those are types of the things that make it hard to parse out in those three categories. One, VOP detainers only. Two, the folks who have both, and in the absence of that detainer, probably would never have had cash bail set. And three, the folks who, you know, you're much more serious cases, and that's a bit of a different story.
And I guess for myself, I'm asking about where to get the data from for you guys right now, because while I do believe in the whole steps thing, right? I think some of these things in this moment, we would be doing ourselves a genuine disservice by waiting on certain steps. So when we start to discuss things like the Montgomery County had decided to go in a more progressive manner of criminal justice, right? Something like what you guys are talking about people who are being held for petty probation violations, right? To forget it now when you guys got the good, I'm not here to, no, damn it, I am here to drive policy. Rephrase that. We are here for that, right? So I would wonder if not telling them, so everybody felt good today at the knowledge that in hearing some of the things that people have said about the pretrial division, regardless what the division itself looked like, the most important thing for that process to work was going to be representation at the initial hearings, right? That came from people. And knowing that with people doing that, and I know from our people, that dialogue started maybe a month ago. So in a month of having that dialogue, to have that good news already happened today, right? If there's some other group of people that right now we know are sitting in Montgomery County for a reason that we know is absolute nonsense, I think right now is the time that you guys give it to us real so that we can take it to the people that make these decisions and be supportive in giving you guys the tools to make this happen. Because again, we were always at, and part of the meeting with Val and Ken from the people had to deal with, are you gonna appropriately fund the PD's office to deal with the, you know, this pretrial unit? Because it can't just be the pretrial unit, right? And we can't just, when I talked to Del Ritchie today, one of the things I told them was burnout, right? If you just add this new job, regardless if, because he seems to think it's not a big level of work because we've already got the incarcerated population down to 800. So the numbers aren't as big as what I may think they are, in having these concerns for the amount of support they offer to the PD office for pretrial services. And I don't want anybody to be in a job where, like, how could you be a public defender, right? And you got a hard enough time looking at the bull crap that this system does to people. And if you're a good person, it has to stress you out every time you go into a courtroom and some jackass overcharges some person, you know, who you can look at and tell has a life situation that brought them there, right? And we are changing their life, right? So as good people, and I would think that you guys, in order to be a public defender, you kind of got to be a good person, right? But I'd be pissed off and frustrated with being that good person 6 months in to them adding on more responsibility to what already has to be one of the most stressful jobs. So I would say, I wouldn't go to them and say, yeah, we need to address this issue, without saying we need to address this issue while using the PD's office. And the only way to use the PD's office is to, so I talked to, what's the guy who's the head of the,
Doug Coppins.
Doug Coppins, right? And one of the things I talked to them about was part of this reimagining has to do with not funding our prosecutors in the DA's office at 3 times the rate that we're funding our defenders. That's not a fair fight already. And it says that we think that the only way that this works is through punishment. Part of this change in our criminal justice system has to be to go from there to actual restorative justice, to actual reform. So I would welcome the challenge of adding that. And I think Ali, who is one of the greatest notators, just keeps me, you know, my mind working, right? Would welcome the challenge. And most of the people in progressive Montco would welcome the challenge, and adding into our fight regarding this pretrial services unit is addressing those folks that are currently being held for probation violation.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point to bring up. And I would think that we should begin to collaborate and partner together, because you're like, when you're saying the people are bringing these issues up, the people are who matter, right? They're the people who are paying taxes, they're the people who are voting, and they're the people who are directly impacted. Our attorneys, the staff of the county, are not directly impacted by these programs, by these choices, by these policies, right? So I think the biggest and most crucial step is to make sure that we are joining with you to have those conversations, to gather the information that we need to formulate our thoughts, to make sure that we're attacking this strategically and making sure that what we do is intentional and actionable, right? Because the worst thing we can do is go running in there with our heads cut off and make fools of ourselves and not know exactly what we want to ask for. So I am all for asking for those numbers, getting that data, and figuring out how we strategically attack the issues that we know are present, and making sure that we're like a solid force together, you know, whether it's you guys, the NAACPs, whoever we need to get to partner with us, so that we know that we have backing. Because when we come together, it's different, right? If I go in, I can get shooed away, I can get pushed down. But I think if we come as like a united front, it's more impactful, and then it says something, right? To me.
I agree. And I just want to be clear. I'm counting 4 different groups that are currently on the call now, right? So I think that that's why I'm saying, like, if you guys get the data and the information, like, we are here for it. Like we walked into a meeting today to talk about almost everything that we were concerned about with pretrial services and what that would look like. We walked to a meeting today and we're basically told, yeah, we know all those things and we've addressed each of them. Right? Like this, it's gonna look exactly like what you guys think it's gonna look like, right? Like we walk, so now we're ready to move on to something else. And so we got you guys on the call, and you guys are, hey, they told us that they're gonna give us this support, but this is another issue that we have, is the folks that are being held. Because again, the whole goal, like in our budget, the money that they're saying that they can't give to the PD's office to grow it, we could literally get by not paying for the damn jail. Like, it's there more than that. Like you could give the PD's office the money that they need while also funding some of the other programs that they're discussing, saying that we can't fund, right? So one of the things we talked about today was this mental health issue in Montco, specifically in Norristown, right? And the expectation that you would create a diversion that says go to mental health services, when we know right now it's a 60-day wait in Norristown for somebody to be seen, just for intake, not for actual services, right? So, but if the commissioners are involved in this, right? If the people who have to, yes, I'll answer that in 1 second, Dean. If the people who are paying for most of these things, right? If nobody brings it to their attention, they're just not going to pay for it. And they're going to choose to pay for the other things. But we all, as Alana said, like together, I think that we could get a lot done. So one of the comments that was made today, Dean, was, yeah, so I've heard that the word is going around that the only reason that we're doing this pretrial unit is because of the situation that happened with Dean and Keisha. And I just want to make it clear that that's not why we're doing this now, right? That's what was said to me. And my understanding of what this situation is, I have no doubt that people have worked on it prior to now. But what happened in the past year was the community, the people actually became more aware of what was going on and started to push the issue. So whereas though people had the idea, right, commissioners weren't necessarily saying we'll give you $1 million to start this program.
Yeah.
Right. But now you got the community members at the commissioners meeting every other week on record saying this stuff for a sustained campaign. And now we see that these things are happening. So knowing that kind of power, I just, hey, you guys want, you want probation numbers, put the question out, ask it. If you want us to ask for the numbers, we can ask for the numbers also. But again, the goal is to actually give equity and justice, if that makes sense, right? Like people who are incarcerated should be, like, the only reason they're there is because we all know the consensus says this person needs to be incarcerated right now. Like there's a danger to, if we have them outside, not a property danger either. Like there's a danger to people. And as public defenders, you guys are going to be that front line to keep, guys like me on the street. Like I'm going to need a public defender if I sit out on 202 in Henderson on the 25th for a George Floyd protest and Upper Marion Police decide to put the cuffs on me because I sat out there for too long. I'm going to need a public defender to make sure I don't lose my job. I know that right now. So I want to give you the tool. So Dean, there's a question in the chat about the risk assessment tool. I don't remember the exact name of the tool. Doug said he bought it. It's the US something tool. I'll send it in the email because Liz the one that took the notes. His answer regarding the tool though was, without us questioning, that the tool was not supposed to be the the only way the decision is made. So as we had discussed previously, it needed to be in conjunction with the information that was collected from the Pretrial Services Unit. And then when that's given, so part of it, I guess what we're trying to figure out here today too is how is that gonna look? Like if I get arrested for sitting out in the street and now I'm getting ready to go in front of the MDJ. If this is 2 months down the line, because they said they don't want to give me a time frame, but they said about 2 months maybe. I think they're looking at trying to really start. I know it's not all over the county, but have their little pilot courts where they're doing it out of. But if I got arrested, right, from the PD's perspective, what would happen? How would it look? Would I get representation as soon as I got to court? What information would you have as my public defender initially? Like when we first sat down, would you only know what I'm charged with? Or are they telling you guys that the Pretrial Services Unit is responsible for doing that assessment with me and giving that information to you to represent me with at my first hearing?
Well, we have the ability to meet with the client ourselves, and we will be there at the first hearing. So it's a combination of our conversation and information that they supply. I mean, we would have to examine what they give us. I mean, maybe it's inaccurate, maybe it's whatever. I mean, frankly, you know, I think my information comes from my client. You know, I will look at what they have, and the court will look at what they have, and if cash bail is set, then we have the review the next day to argue it in front of a court of common pleas judge. So
we have our is it next Friday? I think, don't hold me to that date, please, but I think it's late next week or it's in the process of being scheduled. I don't recall. But very soon we're going to have a mock run at this, right? Where we're going to see exactly how the interview works, and we'll know more then about that. But it is our understanding, well, not our understanding, I know for a fact, we're going to be given whatever data is gathered in the pretrial services process. We're going to give that. We also are going to be given time with our clients before the arraignments begin. It's not like we're showing up and they're saying, you know, here's your report, go. You know, we have time with our client. And, you know, it's just like any other court case. If the court's ready to go and I'm not ready because I'm still with my client, well, by God, you're just going to wait for me to finish with my client, you know, because that's who my obligation is to, is that man or woman or child sitting with me. That I'm representing. That's my obligation. It ain't to the judge. It ain't to the court. It's to my client. So we are going to have ample opportunity to take as much time as we need with our clients before this begins. And like Carol said, that's my source of information. I mean, my clients lived it, you know, and my client is going to speak, I hope, candidly and openly with me, so that, you know, we can make some informed decisions together.
Can I raise an issue about the risk assessment tool, or did you want to?
Yeah.
Because in my work in Philadelphia, I'm familiar with risk assessment and algorithms and the debates about it nationally, and the ways that the algorithms encode the racism of the criminal justice system in them. So we know all those things. What would be the best way for us as Progressive Montco to help you monitor how those risk assessment tools are used? Because it sounds like at the beginning we've lost the fight to not have them be part of the process at all. So now we need to really get some kind of data or sense about how they are being used. Are they being used as a So I'm just wondering, as this whole process gets rolled out, what's going to be the best way to monitor the impact of the risk assessment tool on the ultimate decisions about detention and bail?
I'm good. You know, we said earlier, this is a very honest forum, and the honest answer truly at this point is I don't know the answer to that yet. But I can tell you also that when we do know the answer, you know, I'll be there to share it with you. And I say that just because we haven't lived it yet. Okay. I have to see it in action a little bit more before, at least that's my opinion. I don't want to speak for Carol on this or Alana on this, but my feeling is I have to see it in action a little bit before I know how it is applied fully. I can tell you this, Pretrial Services obviously is going to be keeping their own data. We're also going to be keeping our own data. I don't want to be dependent upon the numbers of other people and saying, here it is. Trust me, it's accurate. You know, I have no reason to believe it won't be, but I want to keep my own too, right? So we're going to be keeping our own data. They're going to be keeping data. I can't certainly speak for the DA's office, but I'd be shocked if they weren't keeping their own data. I mean, why wouldn't they? So I think everybody's going to be collecting their own data sources here. And so, Sue, the honest answer I can tell you right now is I can't answer that tonight. But you know, this, what I'm hoping for is this will be the first of many conversations as we go forward through this. Some of them hopefully will be coming back with great, positive, wonderful reports, and some of them may be coming back with saying, I found a hiccup in the system. Here's what the hiccup is. Let's strategize over how to address it.
So
That's my feeling.
Sorry, a question about that is, so this risk assessment tool that the MDJs are going to be using, right? There will be some sort of a number that's assigned, and then they will look at that number and then decide if that, you know, in conjunction with other factors.
I can tell you what the factors are so that it will help paint a picture a little bit. It's a 9-factor analysis. And so it doesn't actually require you to do any sort of interview. It's just based on the facts of the case that's in front of the MDJ. So it's a public safety assessment for anyone who wants to Google it. So the factors are age at the current arrest, current violent offense and 20 years older or younger. So that's like 2A, do they have other priors? Pending charges at the time of the arrest, prior misdemeanor convictions, prior felony convictions, prior violent convictions, prior failure to appear in the last 2 years, and prior sentence to incarceration. And these are the same tools that are being used out of Camden and other pretrial programs that have seen like the pretty good successes where like fewer people are entering into incarceration. So from a psychological standpoint, I enjoy this a little bit more than some of the other risk assessments, which are much farther, they're more biased just on their face because they ask questions about race and socioeconomic status. And these things are just based on basically the charges in front of them at this specific time and anything that would have come up on the rap sheet. And these are typically factors that would have been figured into bail anyway, based on prior convictions or the familiarity of the MDJ and things like that. So just on its face, that's what it is. Now, I mean, I can't say how it'll look because we haven't used it yet, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood that what the rater scale looked like.
And, you know, like anything else, you can only speak to the people who've lived it. And we've spoken to a number of public defenders in jurisdictions where this is used, and they've spoken positively about it. Other folks who aren't necessarily public defenders, but just defense attorneys in the area have told us that, you know, we should be pleased with how it affects the rates of pretrial incarceration. So at this point, you know, I'm relying on the folks who've been there, but, you know, who've been walked down that road in front of us to tell us what the road looks like. If our lived experience is very different than what we're being told, you know, we'll be the first people knocking on someone's door saying, wait a second, folks, you know, this ain't working the way it's supposed to be, you know, working. But we've definitely,
also, Greg, we're going to have the Harvard people that will be riding along with us to help us keep our numbers. So it's not only going to be within the system, the DA's office, that's the program itself, us, we're going to have this outside source that has agreed to sit in our sidecar and
Yeah,
help us.
because I mean, I'm a lawyer, which means I'm not good at math. Okay, I think that's the definition of being a lawyer, is you're a lawyer because you can't do math.
So you
And
mean
so
for
we have
data
somebody,
collection?
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about for data collection? When she said,
Yes, we're going to
Yes.
keep numbers. They're going to analyze them and look for trends for us and things like that as well. So
Right.
it's not just going to be us analyzing it. It's not going to be Carol, me, and Alana sitting in a room trying to figure it out.
It'll
We're
help
gonna-
us sort of isolate any sort of issues that are specific to any one court also, so that we
Yeah.
can target with training or outreach or just educational aspects of the program as well.
So we're going to have this data analyzed a few different ways, just on our end, I'm talking about. So
Yeah, we
so-
met with them, what, like a month or so?
4 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
roughly. Mhm.
Yeah.
So is
So
that
we're-
part of the whole study that, because no, it's not part of the study where they do the bench card, like the scorecard and the,
Oh, it'll be sort of like that. Yeah, that's what we were speaking to them about like the judges' grade books and things like that. Right. So it's not part of the pretrial program. It's just something that our office elected to engage in.
Yeah, so we're,
but it's the same data. It's just coming from the PD's view.
should be the same data. If it's not the same data, then I think we got a different issue to talk about. But everybody's data, whether you're on, Kevin Steele's side of the aisle, our side of the aisle, or if you're the judge, or if you're pretrial services, all of our data should be the same, right? But but numbers are how you interpret them. Okay, it's how you interpret them, and so I want to make sure that we have our own independent interpretation of things as well. And so that's why, we're going to keep it too. But it's, I've heard good things from those who've been down this road. We didn't just sort of walk down it and then with our fingers crossed. We did a lot of diligence on it from other PDs and other attorneys who've worked with this. And I'm cautiously optimistic, but of course, like anything else, we'll go with it. And the system now is so incredibly broken. I mean, it's just incredibly broken system that we have right now. And, we're hopeful and believe this is a step in the right direction. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was a step in the right direction. We think this is going to get us to a much better place, and that's why we're supporting it. But, the proof is going to be in the practice.
So, Greg, I think you're a very intelligent young man.
You clearly haven't spent enough time with me.
I just want to correct you on one thing. The system is not broken, man. It's
So
working exactly how it was designed to.
well, perhaps. I mean, for the way the judges set bail is just a horrible system. It's just because, like Alana said, when we sit on our arraignments, the questions we hear are, I just want to take my head and bang it into my desk, because so often socioeconomic status plays a role in the city. It shouldn't. I don't give a crap if you're homeless or if you're not homeless. You should be treated the same in the eyes of the law. Okay. And folks aren't. And that's what I'm referring to when I say it's broken. It's when you got everybody sitting there considering factors that frankly shouldn't be considered. When you hear judges say, "Oh, I know you. That's not right." Okay, that's I hear that. We've heard arraignment questions like, "So why you stealing stuff?" Wait a second, you can't ask that, and we're there to, so advocacy is key to this also, and that's sort of the thing that we've danced around, but just haven't hit the nail right on that head. Having an advocate with you with the preliminary arraignment is the rock on top of the pyramid here, okay? Because that's what it's about. Because if you've got an advocate there to, if you have an attorney there to advocate for you, to protect your rights, to look out for your best interests, right? You're already starting off in a much better spot. So that is huge. And any successful pretrial program requires that. That has to be the cornerstone of this.
So Pam,
I think, did Greg tell you at the beginning that he and I, and I guess at least 2 other people in the office have been sitting in on arraightments?
Yeah.
For some time.
Yes.
Yeah. So it has been an eye-opening experience, and not the least of which is, whether you're accused of a crime or not, you're still a person. And when they see us there, it just makes a world of difference. It just does, because everyone else that they're dealing with is on the other side. and, you know, they've got somebody, you know, and maybe they need to cry, or maybe they need to do whatever, you know, they've got that time to kind of, you know, just unburden themselves. So even though there's all this other stuff going on and our purpose is great, there is a human aspect to it that is extremely rewarding.
So I was gonna ask, and then you just said that great stuff, Carol, and it threw me off for 1 second. Greg was speaking to, okay, well, this is my question. So one of the things that happened today, is they said that if you, so let's say one of our questions was about if someone goes in front of an MVJ, right? And we're supposed, because one of the things they said was the direction that they're getting from President Judge is cash, least restrictive things first, right? The judges are not supposed to be giving cash bail, right? And that if a judge, though, let's say we have a judge who doesn't agree with this new way of thought, right? That judge still decides to offer cash bail. Then that information then is immediately sent for another hearing to another judge. Is that next, what part in the process do you guys play? Like they told us Pretrial Services does that, but does that still, are you still represented then at this next hearing also?
Yes, that's at the Court of Common Pleas level. That will be Judge Page, and we will be present, as will the District Attorney's Office, and that will happen first thing the next day.
You know what I found very interesting though in that is that nobody sitting there understood. Part of my thing has been, even with all of this work, right? Like there's room for it and it's great. But at the end of the day, our current Constitution tells people who set bail to consider parameters that we're just forcing them to consider now, right? So it's like super interesting to hear in a dialogue when judges say things like, well, I can't be the judge that just doesn't give cash bail on my own because nobody else does it, while simultaneously saying, when we institute a no cash bail policy, there's still going to be judges that still give out cash bail, which in essence says judges kind of could make this decision on their own this entire time.
Because it's codified. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I made bail arguments at the Court of Common Pleas level and read off what factors they are to consider. And I will have judges say to me, where is that? I'm like, it's in the code, like it's kind of basic, you know, like, and you don't want to say it like that, but sometimes I feel like I did say it like that. Like, it's like, you've been a judge for a long time, you know, like you should know that it's there, and you're right. So finally an effort to enforce what has been codified for a long time. I mean,
yeah, and you've got right now 30 different fiefdoms in Montgomery County, right? You've got 30 different MDJs, and each one of them has their own turf, and by God, they're going to do what they want to do. And that is a tough thing to change quickly. But I mean, we will do it, and it will change. But that's a long history to fight against. And
I'll tell you how we change it. I think we have to get to a place where we're like we elect judges, right? I just don't think that we as a community do. I'm honestly at a sense of looking foolish. I've been voting in Pennsylvania now for about 17 years. I'd probably say only for the past year have I truly understood that I was voting for the person that I could potentially be sitting in front of with my damn traffic tickets.
It's something, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure most people don't understand this because truly we could have attacked this years ago by just making judges run on the fact that, you know, they can't necessarily say, I'm not going to give people bails when I know they don't deserve bails, right? But they could have said it to people and got voted like based off of that and could continue to win their elections based off that. So,
and when you're in a community and, you know, one of your candidates for MDJ, you know, for your community is you know, a retired police officer of 30 years in the service, well, think about that when you go to the voting place. You know, when you cast your ballot, think about that background. And think about if that's the person you want setting bail for your child, if they're in front of that person. So you're right. And I'm not defending the system by any means, trust me. Don't even get me started on what I always joke and call it the big book of laws. You know, don't even get me started on the things I would like to change in that big book of laws, because I'll be here till 9:15 tomorrow morning still talking about it. But you're right. It's an awareness. True justice reform comes from the community. It comes from the public defenders and defense attorneys. It comes from, you know, as we see in Philadelphia, you know, district attorneys who are willing to change the system. It comes from judges willing to change the system. It comes from Harrisburg. It comes from so many different levels, but it all comes down to us, right? Because we're citizens, we're voters, we have a voice.
Right. Alana, could you answer? There's a question in the chat from Pam. I know Alana said she can answer. The question is, when a person is having a mental health crisis in Montco and 911 is called, do those people get taken to building 50 rather than jail? That's used to be the case? Is that still how we do it?
Yes and no. So if 911 is called and the police go out and they recognize, and that's the crucial point, is that the police recognize that this is a mental health or altered state type of emergency, they can and often do call adult mobile crisis, and they can help divert that person to the appropriate level of care, whether that be a hospital, a crisis residential program, or to help make inroads for inpatient. Now, if the police respond and that person who they're responding to is struggling to manage the symptoms of their mental health and are in such a state that they become violent or lash out or spit, they can be charged. And the way that some police officers read that is shall be charged, not can or may, but shall. And so the option of going for treatment is then negated and you are put into incarceration at times. Now, if you present very decompensated when you go in and the doctors and nurses recognize, oh no, there's an organic issue here, they may file the 302, which could then have that individual seen at building 50. And we would make an argument to unsecure the bail and have them go over to the hospital and make sure that they are treated and they are provided those mental health services. But unfortunately, unless someone is able to articulate, hey, I do want to go with you, or they rise to a level of danger to self or others and the 302 can be effectuated, sometimes incarceration is the intervention that is used. And it's not always appropriate and it's not always safe, especially for those folks who are struggling. I know many times families utilize 911 and the police because they're like, my son's perhaps struggling with heroin addiction. I'll just pick that because it's something that I think we can all understand. And I don't know what else to do. He's using. Let me call 911. The police will help, right? They might, they could. Not often, not always. And that's the risk that we take when calling 911. And so I think mobile crisis and other community-based mental health supports are probably the best line of defense in that instance to make sure that someone is trained to assess the needs of the person and can make those phone calls to Gaudenzia for that level of care assessment from the street to help you figure out, do you have insurance? How do you apply for insurance? All of those things are really crucial things. Also, if you do enter into incarceration for, I think it's over 90 days, you're at risk of having your benefits turned off. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who can't get out in a timely fashion and we're waiting for a court stipulated level of care assessment, that can create sort of a log jam in our system of getting someone from point A to point B when it could have been a more linear process. So there are resources that are available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, mobile crisis, and they respond throughout the entire Montgomery County, and they will help in the case of a mental health emergency. And most, if not all of the police departments in Montgomery County are familiar. Now, whether they choose to elect them is a different type of conversation. But they do know that they exist. They have been provided trainings. Greg does train with them at the MCES cop school. So they are aware. And so it is an available resource to prevent incarceration in those cases.
Yeah, and I part of what I do is I do the mental health hearings at Building 50. And of course, it's not just Building 50. That's where we're based out of, but we do them with other psychiatric hospitals in the county. We do those 4 days a week. So that's generally the first half of my day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesdays is when I talk to the, as Alana mentioned, it's the cop school. And that's exactly what I preach to them is, consider emergency mental health options rather than charging and incarceration. Okay, that is so important. And this also gets back to the value of being present at the preliminary arraignment. We've had some cases where the police officer writes the criminal complaint, leaves it, and goes home for the night. They're being arraigned. The cop's not there for me to talk to, but I've been able to reach out to them after their shift or early the next morning and say, look, that conduct that led to your arrest, you could probably do a 302 petition and make it stick. Would you file that? And I've had success with that, where they will file it even after the arrest. Then they'll get assessed while they're at the jail, get them over to Building 50. Once they're in Building 50 and getting medical treatment, correct me if I'm wrong, Alana and Carol, I can't think of a case where I haven't been able to get the bail modified to unsecured under those circumstances. That's why I keep pushing everybody. When you have that situation, divert to mental health treatment, because number one, again, it's the right thing to do. But number two, just putting all that aside and just taking a strategic approach to the case, I've got a much stronger argument for bail to say, look, judge, they've been in Building 50 now for X number of days. They're stable. We put them back in jail. They're going to destabilize psychiatrically. Okay, they're going to decompensate. Let's get them home. Let's get them involved in outpatient treatment, and let's maintain that plan. Okay, that is a pretty successful argument you can make to the MDJ courts or even to the common pleas judges. And so so diversion to mental health treatment is important, again, because it's what they need. It's what that person needs. But also, just putting on my lawyer hat and nothing else, it helps me to help my clients.
I think too, it's important to note that we have bi-weekly meetings with the jail to monitor anyone who comes in who's displaying symptoms of serious mental illness, where we go through the entire jail census to kind of find those people who need case managers, who need residential programming, who have struggled to make those connections on their own through no fault of their own in the community. And so we try to make sure that we give the wraparound approach so that they're discharging from the jail with more supports than they came in with, ideally, and making sure that we sort of have a tertiary plan of how to make sure that their stabilization is continued when they leave.
Does anybody else have any questions related to our PD's office and our new pretrial services that we're going to be seeing in Montgomery County in the near future?
Yes, I have a question. Can y'all hear me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if y'all already touched on this. I haven't been able to completely listen to the entire thing. But are there any within this pretrial, my bad, are there any within this pretrial division, are there any type of retroactive services that are being offered, considering the injustices and different things that have already happened, considering the lack of pretrial intervention available in Montgomery County? You done?
That's my baby crying, by the way.
Can I ask a clarifying
That's enough to make
question?
you smile right there, isn't it?
So do you mean, are we going to go back and look at the people that are incarcerated and address their bail?
Yeah, or I mean, anything within the sort, like any type of retroactive services.
Our current pretrial division in our office reviews the bail people that are incarcerated every day, and we file bail motions and petitions to address the current situation. So I think we're pretty current on, the bail issues. We may not be successful, but they're not forgotten.
And anyone who's ever been represented by our office, if they feel that they would like to be connected with any sort of supports or programs, they can always feel free to reach out to me, even if their case is concluded. I'll help anyone. So you bring in your cousin and whoever, like just give them my phone number and I'll connect them to the people that they need.
And to Carol's point, every morning we get, I think I used this word earlier, the night board, which is the admissions and discharges of the prior day at the jail. And it's important to take that night board and see who's in and who stayed in and why are they in, and act immediately on those. And that's really, really an important thing to do. I can tell you, never a day goes by when I don't look at that prison number when I get to the office and when I leave at night. Every single day I do that. And that's because, we are down. The number's hanging on my bulletin board at my office, but I want to say March 12th of 2020, the prison population was 1427, I think. Okay. And again, if you find it's a few off, then it's a few off, but I think that's what it was. And you're right. Now it is around 800 people. And that's a pretty big reduction so far. It's not enough of a reduction, but it's a big change. It's a 44% reduction. And I'll be damned if that number is going to start going in the opposite direction. It's got to continue that downward direction. And that's why I check it every day. And we did have a span of about a week where it just steadily creeped up. And I know Carol and Alana were there when we raised that issue with, the PJ, the president judge, and with others. I was on the phone with the district court administrator saying, I don't know if it's your judges, but that number hadn't come down over the past week. What's it doing? This week, it's been going back down again. So I obsess over that number. And have for quite a while. When I get in, I log in first thing when I hit my computer and I look at the inmate population. When I go home at night, it's the last thing I look at before I go home. Just a little obsessive, don't you think? But
and that's well, we need that because again, that's going to be the only way we start going. Like we're paying. I don't know the exact number, but I want to say that jail is 5th or 6th on the list of most expensive things that the county's paying for.
Oh, I don't doubt
county
it.
Funds.
I don't doubt it. And remember back in the day, I'm sure Dean will remember this. Back in the day, I remember that jail population was like 2,400. Okay, it was that bad. Probably 2000 and what, 2, 3, somewhere in that ballpark. I think it was high, and
they were sleeping in the gym, and they were pulling in cots. Yes.
Yeah. And then some programs were started to get it down, and it would come down. But the decrease we've seen over the past year, obviously, has been the sharpest decrease over any particular year we've had. But
but that decrease was due to COVID. And
it was right. But what we've learned from it? We've learned we can do it. Yeah. We're incarcerating too much. I don't see that Montgomery County is on fire and burning down. Okay. So we've learned you don't need to incarcerate all these, everyone pre-trial. You don't need to. What data do I need? Look at the past year. Okay, we're okay. We're living. So so we can continue moving in that direction, and we're committed to moving in that direction. And if we weren't, I wouldn't be obsessing over those numbers so much.
Again, we'll keep working at it. I know from Progressive Montco, Social Justice Caucus, the NAACP. I know we're all at a place of, again, I understand that we can't necessarily look at you today and say, we want you to do all of this work and abolish this stuff right now. And you guys got jobs, you guys got families to maintain, right? But we, as a people, have just reached a point where Philly couldn't really, Krasner tried, right? But because Philly's so big and they have that density issue and the numbers issue, right? It makes it tougher to do. Why wouldn't we be the ones to show everybody else like how it could work? Like, why isn't Montgomery County outwardly showing and saying to people, we decarcerated 600 people in less than 12 months and our crime rates didn't increase here. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, so it works. Like it's information that I mean, it's going to be out there now, right? Like it's going to go on YouTube, and now people are going to hear the fact that, because I didn't know until it was said to me that we had actually, I was damn near getting ready to go outside and scream about how we need to let people out because of COVID, right? So the fact that it was happening here, you know, I know people would say they're not doing it for fanfare, but these are the things that people need to see so that they know who to be behind and who to support, right? Like, so if there were judges that were a part of this process and they were out and people outwardly told this information, then maybe Norristown's District 1-3 or whatever MDJ race, instead of only having a 12% turnout, would have had a 35 or 40% turnout because people wouldn't have wanted it to change, right? Like, even though the numbers were low in Philly, as high as they were, what was clear was the fact that people did not want that DA to change. I was looking at a number a little while ago in Philly that said, I think it's like 12% more of the people who voted in Philly voted for that DA race and didn't answer the referendum questions.
Wow.
People went out and voted for that specific, you know, and people always do that. So I think in Montco, you know, we have the opportunity here to push the right things for people, right? To be the model for where everybody else wants to be. I think with allies like you guys working in the office and working towards that, I think we're well along the way. Allies like Dean, who continues to educate in a way that, again, I had no intention of being a lawyer, right? I'm learning stuff every day. We learned a couple of weeks ago that you didn't have to be a lawyer to be an MDJ.
That's right.
Right? Like I don't think people know that. Like, how many kids right now that are growing up actually think that you have to be a cop, then a prosecutor, go to law school for 12 years, pay all of this money in student loans to be a judge, when in fact, you go to some college and be a social worker and then go to Harrisburg for a month, right? And come out here and run to be a judge somewhere. Right?
So we're running now, huh? Me and you?
Nah, I'm not.
I was gonna say, is this a campaign announcement? Am I hearing something here? Let me write this down. Is there something you want to tell me?
If I ran, we definitely would not have to worry about the population.
Is it
that President
is the check code to Friends of Jones? Is that where we're?
Not at all. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
Well, you'll let me know.
Dean, got a question?
Yeah, just two questions before we get off. I'm just curious. So, and I've said this to a million people that it's all about funding, and you made a great point tonight that you've been told you're going to fund you to what you need. Yep. But what is that? What do you need, and what did they promise to give you in terms of funding for this program?
We're getting new attorneys and new support staff. We're expanding our attorney spots and support staff spot.
And how many did they give you a number of how many do you think you need to do that? It's a big job.
It is a big job. We're starting with because the program is starting, in a pilot level. So we've been approved for a couple of full-time attorneys and a support staff position to start with.
And a new social service advocate.
And a new social services advocate.
So we'll be up to 3 social service advocates.
Yes.
That's great. And then the other thing I'm concerned about, and that really is my last question, is what have they made or what have they done with the big elephant in the room with FTAs, and that for years nobody ever gets their subpoena. So a high number of people, and you go in those courts, you saw it like I did. How many times did people just not get their subpoenas? And so they're going to have a higher than average FTA rates that these risk assessment tools have never taken into consideration.
No, it's my understanding, and again, I'll know more, late next week, but it's our understanding that, and they're reworking the order, because right now, if you fail to appear, it just says bench warrant lifted, whatever. There's going to be an explanation checkbox on there.
Sure.
So if your failure to appear is, I didn't get notice, I moved and I didn't get it, here's a new change of address form, that's actually going to be considered an excused FTA, and it will not affect you
That's going forward.
going forward. It will not affect
But all
you.
these are about the last 2 years on the risk assessment tool.
Well, we're
How
trying,
do you address
we just had a meeting, was it yesterday, Carol? Or day before yesterday, on how we are going to address current bench warrants and the ones that have come out recently, the open ones. And we're still working on that. I don't have an announcement on that yet, but we're very optimistic that you'll be seeing something pretty soon that will help us clean a lot of those up in a way that will not adversely affect folks currently, and will not have an adverse effect on folks if they should ever get arrested in the future and undergo the pretrial assessment.
And Dean, they're going to do the notice through the phone. They're going to be text notices and things of that for appearances as well. So that's another thing.
Yeah.
He also said, because we asked about this today, they said that they would be creating a system where somebody could actually check in. So same way if you schedule a doctor's appointment, you can go onto that website to confirm your date and stuff, that people will be able to go back in and check the date.
And
but one of the things I did say to them, he didn't agree with me. I didn't get them to say okay, but I feel very strongly about this. People should be getting court dates before they leave the courtroom, in addition to the other things, right?
That's the way they did it. They do it in Philadelphia. They have never done it out in the county. Although I was told, I think one judge
did it for a while.
One judge did it.
The answer to me for
What
why
happened to
that was
her?
problematic was
Not on criminal.
Yeah, what happened to her? They got rid of her.
they he said that, you know, I don't want to make him sound bad, right? Because it was actually a good meeting. But the response was kind of like, because judges don't know what they're going to be doing in 2 months from now. That literally was the response to why we can't schedule. It's kind of like, people, what if something happens? And so my question is, well, we don't schedule hearings the day before. So even if you schedule the hearing a month out, you still could have life happen and have to reschedule the hearing, like we'd still be in the same place. So there's nothing really keeping us from actually scheduling those hearings while somebody's at court, other than the choice to say, we don't want to plan that far ahead.
Well, actually, they used to give out your arraignment date at your preliminary hearing date. So you would know what your next court date would be. Currently, they are not doing that. You're signing a notice that you will have a next court date, but it's got TBD, to be determined on it. But traditionally, for years, you got that next court date. Now, that was really didn't matter, because everybody, I shouldn't say everyone, 90% of the people we would file on their behalf a formal entry of not guilty. So although they were getting some kind of date that kind of right there, you know, it really was for a date that typically they didn't have to appear for. So they can do it. I guess the point of me saying that is they can do it. But right now, even that date is not being given.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you.
I don't either.
But I think part of the thing too is, yeah, I don't disagree with you that somebody should just be given a subpoena to come back for their next court date when they walk out from today. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. You know,
it's a judge's decision, though, and again,
judge's decision is a court administration decision, and I see the logic in it, and I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, and I'm not going to sit here and explain why they don't do it. I don't have an answer to that for you, because there is a logic to it. The only thing I can say is, yeah.
No, just
I'm sorry.
It's another thing, like Dean said, that's going to be part of the risk assessment. And if it looks like past failure to appear is weighing too heavily in the risk assessment, then that would be a flag.
Sure, absolutely. It would. So I don't know for sure the answer to this, but I don't think at the beginning they're going to be counting past failures to appear with any significant weight, because you don't know if it was excused or not excused.
That was the
they don't have that form. I'm sorry.
Right.
That was the understanding that I got today.
Yeah.
That's what
And-
they understood.
Right. So I don't know how much weight they're going to put on past failures to appear because you don't know why that was. Okay, very well could have been excused. And so you can't hold that against somebody today. Going forward, the best we can do is, belt and suspenders to make sure everybody knows their court dates. They're going to get that text message. Our lawyers are going to be notifying folks of when to come to court. We can have redundant systems to make sure folks know. And if there is a failure to appear, and it is because of I was in the hospital, I didn't get the notice, I moved, and my ex-significant other comes over, takes my mail and throws it in the garbage, and I never see it, that's not ever going to hurt you going forward. There's going to be excused failures to appear.
The questions for failure to appear are weighted specifically. So pending a charge at the time of the arrest is worth 1 point if you press yes. Prior conviction is 1 point if you press yes. Prior failure to appear in the past 2 years, if you press 1, like if I've only missed 1 time, that's weighted as 2 points. And if you've failed to appear 2 or more times, it's weighted as 4. Okay. And then prior failure to appear older than 2 years, no is a 0, yes is a 1. So they'll take into consideration certain things like that, but then also, like Greg is saying, the special circumstances. And then I also wanted just to mention some of the issues that cause people to failure to appear is housing instability and stuff like that. So we have a grant that's in the works for what we're going to be calling a homeless court, or for the homeless specifically, where we would have an MDJ judge coming out to a population that is housing unstable, to make sure that we're running a specific court for those folks to come on a specific day once a month, so that they can all kind of come together. We'll go through all of that, make sure that the failure to appear issues are noted, talk them through what they need to do to make sure that their address is on the record, getting them hooked up with the hospitality center so that they can have a mailing address. So we're waiting for that grant to be approved, but that's something that we're hoping to pilot.
And I think they're also, and again, I'm not 100% sure on this, so please, I invite anyone who knows to correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's also going to be consideration given to the event for which you failed to appear. If you were convicted and failed to appear at sentencing, that might hurt you a little bit more than if you failed to appear for a pretrial conference or something. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I know there was discussion about that, and I don't know where they finally landed on that. I guess I'll find out, late next week. But there was some conversation about that as well.
So again, I don't mean to, I guess, belabor the point, but if you do look at your risk assessment tool, like you said, Alana, you have 3 failures to appear. You're almost at 5 points already without anything else. And it's a tool that just takes the numbers. It doesn't assign value to a number. It says, this is the numbers, right? It's all done by a computer. So I mean, I'm just curious how they're going to address it. That's all my questions. I don't see how they do with a risk assessment tool that is electronic. And I mean, I guess I belabored the point, but it is a concern, I think, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I think you're right about the tool being electronic. I would hope that our PDs, part of the reason for their attendance at the hearings now is going to be to cover that area, that space that was created by a tool that is just, by computer. Right? You kind of taught me that one, Dave, right? Like, we got to make sure we have the representation there to argue against what it is potentially that without the PD being there, the judge would have just got that thing that said, with 3 failure to appears, because this guy needs to be held because he scored a 6 already. Right.
And I mean, we're seeing our clients, like not just at the arraignment, but we have paralegals that are embedded in the prison that are meeting with people within the first 48 hours of their incarceration, sometimes within the first 24. So we're getting snapshots of like, oh, well, I had this, or I was down in Florida in rehab and I just didn't know to send a letter. And then they send that information to me. I write up something that goes into a bail motion and we try to figure things out. So we're trying to put in as many safety nets and mechanisms to catch these issues with like the scoring, because I mean, I know I raised this, and I know Greg and Carol have both raised this concern. What's to stop someone from being overcharged to trump that number up, right? And that was the first thing that came to mind. Well, if we start seeing that, then I wouldn't in good conscience feel good about utilizing something, you know what I mean? So I think we have some sway. I'm hoping that what we have issues with matter enough to the people, and that we would come to groups like this and say, hey, look, we're seeing some things, like, do you have our backs? And then we would fight the fight together. That's my hope, right? So if we see that this is just another way to play into their hand, I'm not playing. We're done. The game is over. You know what I'm saying? So I think if we come to the table in the spirit of full transparency and we hold each other accountable, that's what we can do for one another. And then we'll do that on a higher level moving forward too. That's my hope.
And you know, to kind of wrap it around to that thing that made us smile today. I mean, I am pleased that when we had our supplemental budget meeting with the commissioner's office, you know, I'm grateful to have the help, but you know what, truly I'm grateful for is we were heard, right? And you can't put a value on that, right? We were heard. And that was the message we got back from them when they announced this, is we heard you and we understand what your needs are. And here's what we're going to do to help you get started with this right now. And then as it goes forward, we'll have more conversation if we need to. So, you know, that's putting the money where the mouth is, right? And just, you know, being heard on what your needs are. I mean, how important is that to all of us and everything we do?
It didn't necessarily start out as a slam dunk that we were going to get what we wanted. We kind of went into it thinking, you know, maybe we're not going to get what we want. But it was a very productive conversation. It actually covered some other items that didn't necessarily pertain to this. But as Greg said, the two of us ended that meeting and we were like, I feel like somebody finally listened. Mm-hmm. And that's very gratifying. And you know, and obviously they did, because when was that meeting? Last Friday?
Yeah, it was less than a week before we got our notice.
And then we got an email today telling us that, you know, that was what was going to happen. So, yeah. And we you know, it's preliminary and this is to get us off the ground. So let's see where we go from here. Just like the program is preliminary, you know, we got to get started. You got to get your foot in the water before you can say whether it's cold or hot. You know, and if it's hot and you pull back, then you're going to do something about it. I mean, we're attorneys, we're vocal, we're passionate, and we're good advocates for what we want. And I think, you know, we have confidence in ourselves that we're able to push forward. We welcome that the groups that are behind us, because it's coming from another angle and reinforcing what we're seeing and what we're saying. So when I said earlier that it becomes important, it does. And, you know, we're not going to go down this path. And if this thing turns out to be, and I'm going to say it, if it turns out to be a shit show, then we're going to have to come together, because, you know, we're going to need the support. You know, obviously we'll address it as we go along, but, you know, we're not here to place things in a bag and say, oh no, everything's going fine, because that's not life and that's not believable. And, you know, while we have, you know, we're excited about the program, I don't think we're naive enough to think that there isn't going to be hiccups and bumps. So, you know, and we'll take those. What we're not going to take is some huge tsunami coming on us and, you know, time after time after time, not being successful and finding out that, you know, the tool or whatever it is that they're using, or, you know, maybe even the judge that's hearing us the day after is it's not working. Right. So we'll voice that and we'll keep you posted on that, and we'll welcome the support that you can provide to us.
I for one, I appreciate it. Because again, listen, this work doesn't stop. And I just think that, like, I don't want to toot our horn, but I want to make sure to say that I also don't think it's a coincidence that the talks on these Zoom calls have picked up and have led from these Zoom calls to some different meetings in the community. And in the course of this last 60 days, to be on a call with the PD's office and hear that what you guys are feeling now also would be somewhat of maybe a shift a little bit in our understanding of our intentions with criminal justice, right? And what things we're going to be willing to let happen. that for me, I want to congratulate folks in Progressive Montco and folks that are on these calls doing this work. Because even though it's a small step, right, it's a step. And it's a step that throughout history, people probably haven't been willing to take, especially in Montgomery County. Like, I'm pretty sure 10 years ago, it would have been a cold day in hell to get people to understand why we need to really fund the PD's office, you know, or why we need to release 600 damn prisoners out of Montgomery County Jail. Like, 10 years ago, I don't know that we would have saw that. We probably would have increased the numbers during the pandemic.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because we can use the we'll use the overall arrests from one year to the next to try to give that projection as to, we reduced the population and the arrests only came in at this, number of cases actually activated.
Right.
So we'll be getting those numbers soon. We probably had them, just haven't had an opportunity to digest them. We average roughly 10,000 criminal cases a year. So I'll be curious to see when the files they're a little bit behind in signing file numbers for cases that got generated in 2020. But when that last number is given, then we'll have an idea. So if we average roughly 10.5 a year and last year was 7.5, then that's a great argument to say, you know what, we don't really need to be incarcerating these people because we weren't. And we didn't have an increase in crime. So they're still kind of catching up on that because some of the prelims were behind. So when we get that final number, that will be a great tool for us to use to advocate for, the least amount of incarceration.
And we're starting the budget season now, which is significant, not just because the budget, putting numbers together for the budget. It's significant because that's when you really do a numbers gathering and numbers analysis of everything that's gone on. How many cases were filed? How many did we have? How many went to the jail? How many did this? It's where you start pulling numbers in from everything you can pull numbers in from. And that to me, sort of that's a look back, so we compare 19 to 20 and, where we are so far in 21. And, you try and just get that gives you, a feel for the landscape. And that's why that's important.
So we've been on for almost 2 hours. And we typically try to keep it to an hour and a half. And
it's Alana's fault. She gets to talking.
Yeah.
See what I put up with? This is my life.
I want to thank you all for coming on the call. Again, I think we're on emails. Any information that we have, we'll send to you guys. Anything you have for us, we'll send to us. If ever you want to pop in, right? Definitely just shoot me an email. We're here every other Wednesday at 8 p.m. unless something else happens. Again, it's not always focused on criminal justice. We definitely are trying to tackle a number of issues. Like I think part of this fight is going to help us get to fully addressing our mental health services in Montgomery County and fully supporting it the way we need to in order for this to work. Because I don't think this can fully work without that piece. So with that being said, I started the call with asking folks that were on the call, what made you smile today? I'm going to end the call with asking you guys, how do you feel now? Let's start with Allie.
I feel good. I feel a little overwhelmed. I think there's a lot of information, which is great. But I think, I'm looking forward to meeting again and like keeping up the dialogue. So I am very hopeful and tired. But I'm very grateful for everybody being here tonight. I learned a lot. So thank you.
Dean?
I'm optimistic. In fact, that PD's office is getting 2 new attorneys and social worker and all those things. That's important. So I'm, again, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm optimistic. So,
Alana?
I am fired up. I'm ready to keep fighting and pushing forward and making sure that we continue these conversations and getting the people what they deserve.
Carol?
I'm tired, but I feel blessed to have met some new faces and people today. Excited to become part of your support and conversation group. And frankly, when we first got the email, Greg and I were both like, I don't have any idea who this is. But look what happened today. Bunch of new friends, people who can support one another and provide sources of comfort and information. So that's how I'm ending.
Thank you. Greg?
Now, just as I took Carol's answer earlier, she just took mine. I was going to say happy that to be here with new friends as we go forward. And I'm a little ticked that the Phillies are losing 3-1 in the 9th. So that's not making me happy.
Sorry.
So
Go Mets. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think I have to leave now. No, I'm encouraged. I have felt encouraged for a while. I'm anxious. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm happy. I'm all that, all at the same time. I'm a potpourri of dysfunction right now. But I am very optimistic as we move forward.
Pam?
I'm sorry my dog's barking, but I'm really inspired by such wonderful public defenders that we have are dedicated, and I'm really impressed and encouraged that if we all work together as a community and people that are dedicated to the job, I feel like you can make some real progress. So thanks for coming out and telling us about what you're doing.
Thank you.
Kelly?
Hey, I have to be just a little quiet. My little one's across the hall. Like Pam, I feel inspired. I am so in awe of the work that these people do. And I'm grateful that people like all of you are in these roles. So thank you. Thank you for all the information tonight. And it was a little overwhelming, but thank you. Very interesting and inspiring, encouraging. Thank you.
Last but not least, Miss Ellen.
Oh, hi. I was a little late. I was on another meeting, but it's terrific speakers, knowledgeable and really smart. But I just love the humanity that they have. I'm really impressed. I'm so glad that this whole group is together. It's certainly progress, and I'm thankful.
And what now, last but not least, Anania. Sorry.
Hi, everyone. I don't really know what the right word is. I would say prompted, like, you hear all this information and it's so overwhelming, but you want to know how you can get involved, or now do we shift our focus to the mental health spectrum and things like that. So I definitely feel prompted to do more. And also, I also want to be a public defender in the future. So it's nice to know that, public defenders are doing this work, because sometimes I'm a little bit iffy about it, considering at the end of the day it is being a part of the criminal legal system. But hearing, the change that is happening within the system is kind of, what's the word, affirming.
So again, I want to thank
Did you answer the question?
I didn't. I'm going to answer right now.
You're not getting off that hook now.
I am tired, but I'm an emotional wreck at this point. I honestly, I'm an emotional wreck, all in a good way, right? Because I want to believe that this work has led us to this point, specifically in Montco. I want to believe. Where's your guys' office located?
Courthouse.
All right. So I'm literally, when we get off this call, you said something earlier, Greg, and I'm going to steal it and use it in a social media post, right?
Oh.
That sign that's on the street, for me, it was the first step in just people acknowledging that we see the problem. The fact that you matter is why we now see the problem, and we're here to address it, right? So every day when people come by there, if nothing else, you have to at least for a second think. So somebody like myself could come to them and feel like, well, somebody here gives a crap about me. May not be the person I'm looking at right now, but there's a good chance that I'm going to come across somebody who looks like me. right? Or somebody who cares about me. So I feel I'm a ball of great, happy emotions because I didn't get on a call with you guys and you didn't say, well, the people from the Pretrial Services Unit just lied to you at 2 o'clock and told you all these great things that were going to happen, and none of it is true. They haven't even talked to us about it. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to continue to work and learn, you know, meet new allies and continue to learn in this process. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm ready to drink. Right, but I'm happy, and I'm going to do a lot of processing with my personal attorney here at home because, again, all of this stuff happens from her. I was a Republican 2 years ago. I was okay with cops. I was okay with the 3 block rule. I was okay with cops. If the cop chased you for 3 blocks, you deserve that butt whipping. I was one of them dudes that felt like it was understandable that it happened. I wasn't necessarily, I was always do the crime, do your time. Like never really thinking about, even though it affected me, like I did time, right? But I just never saw it until this beautiful child here turned 16 and decided to tell me, you need to wake up, dude, and get with the times. So I'm happy and I'm grateful for all of you guys for taking 2 hours out of your night on a Wednesday, on a beautiful summer, spring night to spend.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, we've enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thanks for including us.
Thank you. And we will
To
speak.
many more, right?
Yes.
Thank
To a
you so
happy
much.
hour next time.
Yes.
Count me in.
All right.
All right.
Good
Take
night,
care.
all.
Good night.
Be well.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night.